Sup, Nerdmigos? I'm the Jive Talking Nerd, John Norgrove. We've got Wife here. We're back at it again for another Trek Jive. Same day, different Trek. Same Jive. Whatever. So we just got done with Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War. Spoiler-free review. Watch this episode. It is a lot.
Yeah.
Dog.
Yeah. This episode is the Oppenheimer to the previous episode's Barbie.
This is the Oppenheimer to the previous
and
episode's
we watched
Barbie.
them in a row.
Back to back, just like Barbenheimer.
So
go check out our Barbenheimer reviews, plugs, and whatever the fuck that is.
I guess that maybe says something about our summer, how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
I don't either. We'll find out.
So yeah, we're just gonna give like this video, comment, share, all the rules. We're just gonna go into the spoiler version of the review of this because go watch this episode is the least spoilery thing I can say, and the only thing I can say verklempt of spoil. So
this is a really heavy episode.
There's a lot of episodes.
This is a really heavy episode.
Spoiler alert, klaxons and such. Spoiler alert.
Wee woo, wee woo.
And let's get right into transport incoming. Oof, boy, that is transport inbound, transport incoming. However that lady specifically said that was like
we heard it so many times, and I don't even remember.
Yeah, wasn't
it incoming transport
or possibly incoming transport? It's one of those things that like very clearly haunts people's nightmares. This episode really directly put you in what the Klingon War was in a way that I don't know that we've ever seen Star Trek do. And I don't just mean about specifically the Klingon War. I mean like for any of the Federation wars. You never really get this energy from like the war with Vizinti and Enterprise. You never really get this energy. You kind of get it a little bit with the Romulan War in like a few episodes. You know what I'm talking about? Whether or not this is 3 and or 4 lights. But it's not as heavy. Like 3 or 4 lights ain't as heavy. You kind of get it in the Bajoran War in DS9, but I feel like, again, not in the same way. This may have been one of the darkest war stories ever told in Star Trek of the Federation. And they really did not pull punches on this one. So, real quick, we get flippin' Ambassador Ra show up on a ship, and he's like just real piece of work, this guy. I also, quick aside, I like that they incorporated footage from Discovery.
Yeah.
Of the Discovery Klingons,
yeah.
As well as like Ambassador Ra was significantly closer to like TNG Klingon and not as much as a Discovery Klingon, but like you can see where it's influenced by both. I mean, I know we saw Klingons earlier in I think episode 1 or 2 of this season, but I think it was episode 1 of this season, but yeah, this was. They did a fantastic job with the design for this Klingon, for Ambassador Ra. But that really doesn't matter because this was a story about primarily M'Benga, which I love M'Benga so much. Man, he's such a good character. Last season's M'Benga episode was like a lot.
I feel like we've
this season's M'Benga episode was a lot. Dog, like this. Somebody give this motherfucker a vacation.
Yeah,
he deserves it.
I feel like we've learned a lot about him in both seasons.
Yeah,
but I also
really only in 2 episodes. That's the crazy part. Is that he has had a minimal amount of like day-to-day character growth, right? Episode-to-episode character growth. But his like specific episodes, right? The last season episode with his daughter and this season episode with the Klingon War is like a lot, dude. These
but
are
I feel like there's so
heavy
much
episodes
that we still don't know about him.
I get the feeling that we're never gonna get the complete picture of Mbenga, and like I'm very okay with that. I think that so this episode not only gave us a glimpse into what he did in the war and who he was in the war and how the war affected him, but it also gave us this glimpse into how he adapted and changed in the war and how he has endeavored to change after the war, right? So we learn in this episode that towards the end of the war, he was a doctor, like essentially on the wire. So like as close to the front lines as possible, right? And that's also where he meets Nurse Chapel, who like, poor girl, man, she shows up and it's just like, hello, I'm here for my first day at work. And they're like, thank you very much. You are now in charge. Don't die. Which was crazy town. But through this episode, we learn that he is also this like front lines nightmare ghost. He invented Protocol 12. Right, 12, is that what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. He invented Protocol 12, the Starfleet issue super drug that lets you beat the shit out of Klingons with your bare human hands, which is honestly a fucking feat, dude. Klingons are way stronger than humans, as well as because of redundant organs and literally an entire lifestyle of combat makes them fairly formidable warriors. And Mbenga has, as was quoted by that Andorian commander, the most number of hand-to-hand combat kills in the war, making him just like an absolute beast.
Yeah.
But at the cost of a great deal of his, what it seems like, or the way that he portrays it, a great deal of his humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So much so that he decided to become a doctor to
try. Well, I mean,
it sounds like
he was always a doctor, but he was put in a position earlier on in the war where frontline stuff happened.
So. No.
I think that he's always been a doctor, but being a frontline doctor,
I don't do that anymore. When they talked about him and his combat stuff.
Yeah.
So I think
he was just a doctor with a gun and a penchant for
he was like crazy
hand-to-hand murder.
Black Ops Section 31 adjacent.
Black Ops need doctors too, but they also got a Ops blackness.
And he did so much, and it ruined him so much that he felt like he had to atone for that in a way by becoming a doctor.
Well, but he told that kid with the heart massage. That he joined the Federation to be a doctor, and that's what he essentially was at the beginning of his career in the Federation, and then due to the war was put in the position of being a soldier, right? Yeah. Because a soldier doctor is a doctor second and a soldier first, kind of a thing. But I don't know that we're ever gonna get like a clear. I don't think that we're ever gonna really see the like ghostier parts of his life. I think this is probably the deepest we're going to get into that. But I think that that's probably also the right way to handle that situation. I mean, we saw him perform the Herculean effort of being like at the captain's table for dinner and like compete in or fight Ambassador Raw in whatever Klingon Jiu-Jitsu or whatever that was.
Yeah.
So like we saw him make the attempt, but of course, you know, like jumping ahead to the end, they had that little tiff behind opaque glass, such that we don't know exactly what happened, and we're gonna get into like I want us to both think about what we thought, how we thought that went down. But before we get into that half of things, I also wanted to talk about Nurse Chapel's performance in this and how the war affected her was very profound. You could definitely got the feeling that she was sort of like out of her depths. When she was a doctor on the wire, a nurse on the wire, whatever. And Ortega's sort of relationship to the war and how she did that. I mean, I think that it was interesting that they made her the hottest head in all of this. And we haven't really gotten a glimpse at what the war was to her, and I wonder if we're going to see that maybe next season, right, as her character develops. So that will be interesting. But also, I mean, like, they were in a terrible situation and they experienced terrible things. And like, it's that like, you can take the man out of war, but you can't take the war out of the man. Sort of a situation, officer, whatever, gender, non-specific, Starfleet person, but, or entity. But, yeah, you know what? We got like, even though this was M'Benga and Chapel's episode, I think we got a really deep glimpse into Ortegas as a person, right? And not just the like fun go lucky Tom Paris adjacent sort of like brash braggadocious pilot energy like she normally brings. We really saw like some more depth there, so like absolute fucking shout out to her and her character. Like that was a lot. But it was definitely M'Benga got he was the log, so it was his episode, is sort of the way that I look at that. And man, what a story, dude. Like we just got done with it, and I'm still sort of like processing the whole like energy and plot of the story. Getting into that last confrontation between M'Benga and bloody Ambassador Ra. It's so hard for me to say Ambassador Ra. I do not know why. Honestly, it's because every time I say the word Ra, I'm just like thinking of the Egyptian god and not this Klingon prick. So
thanks to the Horn and Cauldron podcast.
Yeah. Go check out our podcast. Another plug. Ha 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 ha. We got you. No, that's not what's happening here. So what do you think? How do you think that went down? Do you think that? So 2 questions were posed by Pike at the very end of the episode, right? Which is, who started the fight? All right, and whether it was Oopsie-Days or Murder, She Wrote. So, who do you think started the fight? Yeah, that probably works. And then, do you think it was a Oopsie-Days or a Murder, She Wrote?
Well, before I answer that, I think that this was a really
or best bits, any of your
interesting episode that dealt a lot about the after effects of war and how that changes somebody irrevocably and permanently, really. Like, you can get out of it, you can get over it, maybe. I have not been to war, so I can't really speak to how easy or how difficult, how well that works for anyone. And I think that it's really different for everyone. But I think that we saw a lot of interesting conversational pieces about how that affects people.
The lasting effects of
and about
war.
PTSD.
Yeah. And about how we communicate differently relative to our perspective of war. I think that Chapel has a line when she's talking with Spock where she says something to the effect of, war isn't statistics. You weren't there, right? Because Spock, just the same with Pike or Una, they weren't there, right? And it's not that they weren't like alive or whatever
they weren't,
at
like,
the time,
physically
but
there. They didn't experience the
they weren't
same
in
thing.
the trench.
Well, I mean,
As it were, or at least insofar as we have ever been made aware on this show or across Star Trek canon, as far as I'm aware. Una, Spock, and Pike are all not sort of frontline presences in the Klingon War.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I think Pike was an officer, but on a starship. And I don't think I know where Una was. I'm trying to think the furthest backstory I've ever read, like even going into the books, about Una has always been about the peace talks with the Klingons and never about the war. And Spock would have been... I don't really know how old Spock is in this, but I think he probably would have been maybe in the Academy still? Right? Or heck, maybe even back in Vulcan? Back on Vulcan, like working for the Science Academy before he joined the Federation or something. Mm-hmm. So I don't really think, like, I think maybe Pike is the closest to the war, but he would have been an officer junior grade on some sort of a ship or something. From my perspective, and if you know something more about that history, let me know, like, comment below. But as far as I'm aware, none of the three of them are really, like, involved in it in the same way that clearly Ortegas, Mbenga, and Chapel were, like, in the thick, right?
Yeah.
Like, lasers flying past you, dudes screaming in Klingon, like, in the war, right? So it definitely, they bring up this very interesting dichotomy amongst the crew, where you have the people who were in the war, like in the war, TM in the war, and the people who know about the war and how their perspectives are different, right? And Mbenga has that line at the end where he's like, you know, you didn't see what I saw. You still have the potential, like, you still have the chance to believe that people have good. And I know that some things are unforgivable.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's one of the other things that this episode in particular really brings up, which is actually something that we saw a lot in the most recent season of the Orville, which is, okay, so you were a person in a war and you did horrific things, and now you are reformed. You are no longer, presumably, that person, that same person. You know, you no longer have that drive for the malice, essentially. And, like, what does that mean? When are you forgiven? And are you ever forgiven?
Yeah.
To what extent? What kind of apologies do you owe? And how do you expect people to react to you? And how do you react to people who feel like the atonements that you have done to show that you no longer are that person or support that cause are good enough?
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting piece that this episode
with Isaac in that. If you have not seen the Orville and the second season with sort of the ramifications of Isaac, I definitely think that aligns fairly well with this episode. That's a fantastic example. Yeah. So I definitely get that sort of similar energy.
Yeah. Well, and they also show in this episode how difficult it is to be someone who wants to emotionally support someone who has gone through those things. We saw that with Spock and Chapel, and we also saw that with Pike and his crew, and we saw that with Una and the crew, and how difficult it is for somebody who wasn't there and didn't go through those things. Because even though Ortegas was also stationed at Chagall, she wasn't at the same place in the same time as Mbenga and Chapel. So even though they went through a lot of the same things because of the specific war zone that they were in, they didn't even go through the same things because they were doing different jobs, essentially, right? So it even would affect them differently. So we see that spectrum of how it affected people differently, but then we also see the spectrum of how the people on the crew are trying to sort of make sense and find a way to help support their fellow crew members or lovers, as it may be,
to sort of navigate
through that
situation.
difficult thing. Because, you know,
Totally.
they're like, you know, Chapel basically told Spock, like, you weren't, you know, he's kind of trying to come at this as like, I get it. And like, you know, I
get it. And
like I
hear,
get it,
let me
and
help.
I hear, let me find a way to help. Like, I feel like I'm trying to help you and nothing is helping, and I don't like that I can't help you. That hurts me. And her just being like, no, like, go away. I need time for me,
bro.
You
get
know,
out of here.
And that's not necessarily what everybody needs, but like we can see that that's how those two people tried to sort of play out that interpersonal relationship here. And for Una, she tried to protect them by shortening the trip. And Pike was trying to give them space, but also trying to do a little bit of exposure therapy to it, you know, and although he was definitely not like, you have to stay, you know, he was very,
I mean, he gave him the out. He
gave
let him
you know,
leave. He very quickly noticed when Mbenga was about ready to fucking Hulk smash that chair. And was like, maybe you go check, maybe it takes 2 doctors to check on that girl. So maybe
so this was like a really interesting psychological and also a bit sociological episode too, because it felt so weird to be watching them in this dinner in Pike's quarters where they're like trying to be like friendly with this guy who did these atrocities and who caused these crew members so much pain. Like, maybe not personally directly, but still because of his personal orders, like, it caused so much pain and suffering. And to see them trying to make nice with him is just like a really cognitively dissonant moment. And you know, it's you also
crazy. You also see that that Ambassador Raw is like almost remorseless. Right, and then of course we learn.
Well, he's very like, it is what it is, and
I mean, you know, he says that like you know, he's trying to atone for his sins and all this stuff, but like he says he's trying to atone for his sins, sort of in like an almost jovial way, in the same way where like Q makes a flub and it's just just like, well, my bad, I'll fix it, and you're just like, yeah, but you didn't learn anything. Like the episode where Q becomes human. And then like literally as soon as he gets his Q powers back, the 5-dimensional smoke monster people that were coming after him, he like snatches them into his hand and it's just like, I'm gonna make you guys suffer. And the other Q, who like the Watcher Q, shows back up and is like, dog, this is why we made you human. What is happening? And he's like, I was, it was just a joke. I'm gonna let these guys go. Never mind. And you're just like, you didn't learn anything from this. You know? And then of course we learn during that fight with Mbenga at the end, where this guy was in fact not the butcher of Jagal. He did give the order to murder all those kids, but he wasn't the butcher. He didn't slay his own men. In fact, Mbenga is the one who slayed all his men. And this guy just ran away. So he is...
And that's the only reason that he survived, is because Mbenga couldn't get to him in time. But we learn this after we learn that that he asks Mbenga to try and help him basically do politics stuff.
Which...
Not knowing who Mbenga is. Not knowing that he is the one.
Even not knowing who Mbenga is. Bold fucking strategy, Cotton. Right? I mean, I'd say that we could see how that turns out, but we know how that turned out. It's a Klingon dagger in your second heart, so fucking don't do that shit, dog.
But in the conversation where that's basically revealed at the very end before the
I think Chapel heard that whole conversation.
Oh, I think she did too.
I think I got that energy when Chapel was being interviewed by Pike at the end there, when she's just like, he started the fight. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, fuck that guy. Or whatever, you know?
I think that she heard it all, and I think that she came out basically making sure that she didn't need to Hulk smash it up, or for something like that. I think that what happened is, I think that Ra bullied Mbenga essentially into basically making the first punch, shall we say. But I think that he took the knife from Mbenga and stabbed himself.
Okay, yeah. See, I think that Ambassador Ra definitely antagonized Mbenga, and I think that when Mbenga confronted Ambassador Ra with the truth, I think that Ambassador Ra took that opportunity to try and attack Mbenga to hide the truth, because just as Ra said, his forgiveness, right, is based on the fact that he is the butcher of of Jagal. So I think that this is one of those, the walls were closing in on Ra, and I think he tried to take that advantage. But I think that as soon as it got violent, I think Mbenga seized the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? I think that Mbenga definitely wasn't in the morally wrong place in doing what he did, but I think that what he did was probably not the best thing to do, maybe for the Federation in general. But I also think that he was very aware of the fact that this Klingon was building a platform on lies, right?
Yeah.
He was building a relationship with the Klingon Empire and with the Federation based on lies. And, I think that definitely affected Mbenga in an incredibly deleterious way. And given the opportunity, I think that Ra initiated the fight for sure. But I think that Mbenga 100% murder she wrote this shit.
Yeah. Now, there is a third option for the way that I think this could go, which is Ra bullied Mbenga into making the fight, thinking that he would beat Mbenga because he did beat him in several of the spars that they had that we saw, thinking that he would definitely overpower Mbenga, and Mbenga killed him halfway out of
malice,
halfway out of completing the original mission that he had, which was to make him pay, and then halfway out of self-preservation. And the reason why Ra would have done this is either A, to have a more honorable death as a Klingon warrior, or B, to sort of atone for his previous Klingonian sins of being a coward, or B, and I think this is actually more likely, is that he did it thinking that he would overpower Mbenga and kill Mbenga, and then he would get to say, all these Starfleet people not over this yet. I had to defend myself.
Sure.
And I'm a reformed man. You should feel so sorry for me.
I never really got the energy from Ra that he was that he would have. I don't think he would have killed Mbenga for any reason other than to protect the secret that allows him to be in the place that he's in, right? He's shown himself to be a coward before, and so he's going to take the cowardly action, which is to kill Mbenga to protect his secret. I don't think he had an out game for that. I think he was going to be like, Mbenga attacked me and I had to defend myself. Right? But I think that when Mbenga admitted, confronted him and basically said, you're not the butcher of your men. Why are you hiding behind this lie? Right? I think that definitely showed Ra that, if Mbenga lives, then the secret's out and then he loses. You know what I mean? He loses his position of power. He loses any sanctum of any honor he had and any clout he had, and now he becomes not only a Klingon who betrayed the Empire, but a Klingon who betrayed the Empire and lied about a feat that a human did.
Yes.
And not him.
And
I think that the compound interest on that dishonor was so great that his he kind of got the Klingon in him and decided to try and attack Mbenga, not ever considering the idea that Mbenga would be able to defeat him. And I think as soon as that attack occurred, Mbenga seized the opportune to murder an absolute monster.
Yeah, but we also see that Ra was a worm tongue, essentially, because not only did he coward out and take that name for himself, but then he
dishonor
used
on you,
that,
dishonor on your house,
but then
dishonor
he
on your
used
horse,
that to
dishonor on
try
your
and push
ancestors.
himself to fame.
Yeah.
And to power. And
Yeah.
that's why I think that he may have tried to do it so that he could then kill Mbenga, thereby making it so that nobody can ever tell the secret, right?
Well, I don't think that he knew that there was a secret.
He could use that to, he knew that he didn't do it.
He knew that he didn't do it, but how it got did was sort of one of those, like, nobody ever offered a secondary solution.
But by the time the knife was out, Mbenga was telling him, right?
Yeah.
So now he knows that he has to do something about this.
Yeah.
So he can not only attempt to kill Mbenga, which means that nobody
protect the secret.
To protect the secret, nobody can tell the truth about it, and also he can then use that to further catapult himself to fame and power.
I think he certainly would have used it. I don't think he doesn't seem like. It doesn't seem like that he would have attacked with the idea of using it. You know what I'm saying? I think that the way that they told his story in this sort of cowardice way, it felt more like an aggressive act of self-preservation than an aggressive act of like trying to like little finger his way into power.
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
But again, I don't know that we're ever going to know. I guess the real question to y'all out there is, what did you think? What do you think the intention was? What do you think happened in that fight?
And so begins one of Strange New World's greatest mysteries.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. Right? And precisely how does Pike get his hair so up here?
Yeah.
What was your favorite part? I don't know that you can have favorite parts in this episode, but what was your favorite part? I think for me, the most interesting part was that, Mbenga invented Protocol 12 and then chose to stop being able to produce it and was the only one who knew how to produce it. And I think probably the best bit was seeing Mbenga delete that person's transport buffer pattern, that his transporter pattern, in order to save more people. I think they did a fantastic job showing him delete one name and then immediately showing 5, 6, 7 names transport in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, it really showed that Mbenga had been here for a while and understood that the needs of the many... This was the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few without you fucking saying it out loud. You know what I'm saying? And that was so poignant. That was such a specific moment in time in this episode. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, what was your best bit? And then, obviously, to y'all out there, what was your guys' best bit?
I think the most interesting bit, aside from like the did he didn't he with the Mbenga knife thing.
Yeah, sure.
Is the conversations that Spock and Chapel had in this, because you can tell that Spock is really trying hard.
He's giving it a college try.
He's really trying hard to try and be there for her, and he clearly cares for her a lot. And he was, and particularly the scene in the hallway where she just told him to go away. I don't know, but I wonder if that's going to drive a wedge between them in the future, where he's reaching out against all of his Vulcan instincts and upbringing. Emotionally, he's
sort
reaching
of
out.
The beginning of the end of that relationship.
And she shuts him down. And I'm not saying that she's wrong in doing that at all.
Oh, no, of course not.
But, a relationship is two people, and they often, have different ways of thinking about things.
Dealing with stuff. And I think that that Spock is new to not the non-Vulcan part of him.
Yeah.
So it sort of hits a little different. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what happens with that. If that's sort of chalked up to, whatever, and the feelings in the moment and reliving those experiences, or if that's going to indicate a deeper rift growing between them.
Well, I've thought for a while now that the human version of Spock is probably gonna go away by the end of this season, and season 3 of Strange New Worlds is gonna be like back to ground sort of Spock, or return to ground sort of Spock. So it will be interesting to see if this plays a role in that, or if there's something else. This was a big Klingon War episode, but we still have the Gorn War afoot or
It's
whatever.
out there
somewhere. The fuck, guys? I feel like we're running out of episodes here for this. So we'll see what happens with that. But this episode was a lot, dog. This episode was a lot. Let us know below what your best bit was. What did you think of the Mbenga Raw fight? What did you think about just what we learned in the Klingon War, and the way that they presented it in this episode it's Strange New Worlds is just, it's doing good Trek, man. It's doing real fucking good Trek in a real good way. So let us know what you thought about that stuff. Yeah. Either way, I have been John Norgrove. This has been Wife. This has been Trek Jive, Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War. What an episode, guys. What an episode. So we will catch you guys next time. Yeah. I don't know how to end this. This was a lot, man. This was a lot.